A brief warning before we begin. This story explores themes of psychological distress and deals with intense, suspenseful situations. Listener discretion is advised. David Carter was, by all accounts, the luckiest man in America. If you don't believe me, just look at the facts. In 2014, he won a $50 million lottery jackpot with a ticket he found on the sidewalk. 2 years later, he was the sole survivor of a commuter plane crash in the Rockies, walking away from the twisted metal with nothing more than a scratch on his cheek. He invested his winnings on a whim, just before a little-known tech company exploded, turning his millions into a fortune that bordered on obscene. He had a beautiful wife, Emily, who he'd met by chance when they both reached for the same book in a dusty, forgotten shop. They had a daughter, 6-year-old Sarah, whose laughter was the only currency that mattered in their sprawling suburban home, just outside of Chicago. To anyone looking in, David Carter was living a charmed life, a walking testament to the American dream. But David knew the truth. His life wasn't a dream. It was a contract, a meticulously drafted agreement signed not in ink, but in blood and desperation on a rain-slicked street corner a decade ago. His luck wasn't a gift from the heavens. It was a loan from somewhere much, much lower. And he had just received his final notice. The bill was coming due. It started subtly, as these things always do. A flickering of the lights that no electrician could explain. A persistent chill in the master bedroom that no amount of insulation could warm. David tried to ignore it, to write it off as the quirks of an old house or an overactive imagination. He'd spent 10 years pushing the memory of that night into the darkest corner of his mind, burying it under the weight of his impossible good fortune. He had a family to protect, a life to live. He'd convinced himself that he'd outsmarted the system, that he'd found a loophole in the fine print of damnation. He was wrong. The first real sign, the one he couldn't ignore, appeared on a Tuesday. He woke up, the morning sun streaming through the bay window, Emily sleeping soundly beside him. Everything was perfect, too perfect, and then he saw it. Sitting on his nightstand, right next to his wedding band and his watch, was a single smooth black stone. It was no bigger than a quarter, polished to a mirror shine, and so cold it seemed to suck the warmth right out of the air. His blood ran cold. He knew that stone. He hadn't seen it in 10 years, but he could never forget it. It was the collateral, the down payment, the physical proof of his transaction. Its appearance could only mean one thing. His grace period was over. He snatched the stone, its unnatural cold searing his palm, and shoved it deep into his pocket. He couldn't let Emily see it. How could he ever explain it? How do you tell the love of your life that the foundation of your world, the very luck that brought you together, was built on a pact with something that shouldn't exist? That day, the world began to unravel at the edges. At his office downtown, a corner suite with a panoramic view of the city, the numbers on his computer screen would momentarily rearrange themselves into cryptic, mocking patterns. The gentle hum of the building's ventilation system would sometimes warp into a low, guttural whisper that seemed to know his name. He'd catch glimpses of movement in his peripheral vision, a flicker of a long, thin shadow where no shadow should be. When he'd turn, there was nothing there. Just the empty hallway, the silent copy machine, the illusion of normalcy. He was coming unglued, and he knew it. He started sleeping less, spending his nights staring at the ceiling, listening. Every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves outside the window, was a potential threat. He was a man living on a private, invisible battlefield, and the enemy was closing in. The worst part was the change in his daughter, Sarah. A week after the stone appeared, she started talking about her new friend. An imaginary friend, Emily had called it, smiling. Kids have them all the time. But this one was different. Sarah called him Mr. Stripes. She said he was very tall and always wore a nice suit, but he never showed his face. He just stood in the corner of her room at night and watched her sleep. He told her stories, she said. Stories about her daddy. Stories about a promise he'd made a long, long time ago. David felt a primal fear he'd never known. A cold dread that eclipsed even the terror of being in a falling airplane. This thing, this entity, it wasn't just coming for him. It was taunting him. It was circling his family, savoring his fear, enjoying the slow, methodical destruction of his perfect life. One evening, Emily confronted him. They were in the kitchen, the scent of her famous lasagna filling the air. A scene of domestic bliss that felt like a cruel joke. She put her hands on his shoulders, her expression etched with worry. "David, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice soft. You're a million miles away. You're not sleeping, you're barely eating. Talk to me. He looked into her eyes, those beautiful, trusting eyes, and a wave of shame and desperation washed over him. He wanted to tell her everything. He wanted to confess, to cry, to beg for her help. But the words caught in his throat. The first rule of the contract, the one the cold, disembodied voice had hissed in his ear all those years ago, was absolute. You shall never speak of our agreement to an unconsecrated soul, lest their debt be added to your own. He couldn't risk her. He couldn't risk Sarah. So he lied. It's just stress from work, honey, he said, forcing a smile that felt like broken glass. A big deal is falling through. It's nothing. She didn't believe him. He could see it in her eyes. But she let it go for now. The lie hung in the air between them, heavier and colder than any secret he had ever kept. He was utterly alone. The final month ticked by in a haze of sleepless nights and paranoid days. The strange occurrences grew bolder. Family photos would turn themselves to face the wall. All the clocks in the house, digital and analog, would sometimes freeze at exactly 3:33 a.m., holding there for a full minute before resuming their count. One night, David found a perfect circle of dead grass on their otherwise pristine lawn, blackened and scorched as if from a lightning strike, though the sky had been clear. He knew he had to do something. He'd spent a decade believing he was clever, that he had cheated the dealer. The terms of the contract had been simple: 10 years of unparalleled fortune. In exchange, he would owe the entity a service. It was vague, undefined. In his youthful arrogance, David had assumed he could handle it. He'd imagined it would be a simple, albeit unethical, task. A signature on a document, a vote for a certain political candidate, maybe even framing a business rival. He could live with that. He could rationalize it. But now, he understood his profound naivete. He hadn't been dealing with a clever moneylender. He was dealing with something ancient, something that didn't operate on a human scale of morality or logic. And it wasn't coming to ask for a favor. It was coming to collect the entire investment. On the final day, the 10th anniversary of his deal, the house was silent. Eerily so. The unnatural quiet pressed in on him, suffocating him. Emily had taken Sarah to her mother's for the afternoon. A stroke of luck that David knew with chilling certainty was no luck at all. It was a courtesy. The entity was clearing the board for their final meeting. He sat in his leather armchair in the living room, the cold black stone clutched in his sweaty palm. He waited. The sun began to set, painting the walls in hues of orange and blood red. The grandfather clock in the hall chimed 6, its deep, resonant tones sounding like a funeral bell. Then his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. There were no words, just an attachment. A single image. It was a live photo, the kind that moves for a few seconds. The image was of his daughter, Sarah, playing on the floor at her grandmother's house. She was laughing, pushing a toy train. Then, for a split second, the live photo captured a figure in the background, standing in a doorway just behind her. A tall, slender man in a dark striped suit, his features obscured by shadow. As the image looped, the figure slowly raised a hand and gave a single, deliberate wave directly at the camera. Directly at David. His heart stopped. It knew where they were. It could get to them at any time. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a checkmate. A moment later, his phone buzzed again. The same unknown number. This time there was a message. Just 3 words. It is time. The glass slipped from Michael's numb fingers, shattering on the polished marble floor. The sound was distant, a dull pop in a world that had suddenly gone silent and cold. David and Emily turned, their laughter dying on their lips. "Mike? You okay?" Emily asked, her brow furrowed with concern. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Michael couldn't form words. His throat was a knot of ice. He stared at the phone screen, the 3 simple words burning into his retinas. It is time. He had been so arrogant, so sure he had outsmarted a primordial force. He thought he was playing chess, but he had been a rat in a maze from the very beginning. "It's nothing," he managed to choke out, the lie feeling like sandpaper in his mouth. "Just a shocking news alert. A market crash or something." He bent down to pick up his phone, his hand shaking so badly he could barely grip it. David scoffed, clapping him on the shoulder. "Man, forget the market. We are the market. We won, Mike. We actually won." But Michael knew they hadn't. He had just dragged them into the line of fire. He had to get away to think. He mumbled an excuse about needing fresh air and slid open the heavy glass door to the penthouse balcony. The cool night air of the city hit him, but it did nothing to quell the fire of panic in his chest. 30 stories below, the city glittered like a web of captured stars, indifferent to the cosmic horror unfolding above it. His phone buzzed again. The same unknown number was calling. With a trembling thumb, he answered, pressing the phone to his ear without a word. There was no static, no distortion. Just a calm, impossibly clear voice that sounded like shifting sand and ancient ice. "Michael," Xylos said. It wasn't a question. "I held up my end of the deal," Michael rasped, his voice barely a whisper. "Look at this company. Look at this life. Its value is 100 times what you offered me. It's quantifiable. It's real. I won." A sound that might have been a dry chuckle echoed down the line. "You measure value in paper and stock tickers. A child's understanding. You built a tower, yes, but you used my scaffolding. Its foundation is rooted in my bargain. It is tainted." "That wasn't part of the deal," Michael shot back, a surge of desperate anger cutting through the fear. "The deal was to make my current life more valuable. I did that. You have to honor the contract." "Oh, I will," the voice replied, a chilling amusement in its tone. "I always honor my contracts. But you misunderstand the nature of value. The life I offered you was one of pure potential realized. A life where every choice was the right one, every path taken the optimal one. It was a life of substance earned even if only in theory. What you have built is a frantic, hollow shell. It was born of fear, a desperate gambit to escape a consequence. It has no substance. It is a beautiful, intricate sandcastle, and I am the tide." Michael's heart hammered against his ribs. He looked back through the glass. Emily was now playfully arguing with David over which song to put on next. They were so happy, so blissfully unaware. "You're lying," Michael whispered. "You just don't want to admit you lost." "Lost?" Xylos repeated the word as if it were a foreign concept. "I do not lose. I collect. You have been so focused on the material you fail to see the true equation. Let me give you a demonstration of what true value looks like." "Stay away from them," Michael growled, his knuckles white as he gripped the balcony railing. "I am not near them, Michael. I am not anywhere. And I am everywhere." As the words settled in his ear, Michael watched in horror as David, who was laughing and reaching for the stereo, suddenly froze. His smile vanished. A look of profound, unsettling confusion washed over his face. He slowly lowered his hand and turned to Emily. His eyes were blank. David said, his voice strangely flat. "That logo on the screen, what's Oratech?" Emily laughed, thinking it was a joke. "Very funny, Dave. The company you poured your life into for the last month? The reason we're standing in this ridiculous apartment." But David didn't laugh back. He just stared, his confusion deepening into fear. I don't remember." For 5 agonizing seconds, the co-founder of their billion-dollar company had no memory of its existence. It was as if a crucial file had been plucked from his mind. Michael felt the world tilt on its axis. He could feel Xylos on the other end of the line, watching with him, a silent, predatory observer. Then, just as quickly as it came, the fog in David's eyes cleared. He blinked, shaking his head. "Whoa. Okay, that champagne is stronger than I thought. For a second there, weird. What were we talking about?" Emily just shook her head, still smiling, oblivious to the metaphysical violation that had just occurred. But Michael saw it. He understood. Xylos hadn't just threatened him. It had edited his best friend's reality as easily as deleting a line of code. "You see," the voice in his ear purred, "the happiness of your friends, their memories, their very perception of the world you've built. That is all part of the life you put on the table. It's so much more fragile than you imagined." Tears of rage and terror streamed down Michael's face. "What do you want?" he sobbed. "The original arrangement has become insufficient," Xylos stated calmly. "You have not increased the value of your own life. You have merely entangled others in your debt. You've put more pieces on the board. This makes the game far more interesting. So we will amend the terms. No more deals. This is not a deal. This is the collection. Your success was built on the foundation of your relationships with David and Emily. Their work, their trust, their support. You used their potential to fuel your own desperate gamble. It is only fair, then, that the debt be paid from the same source. A cold dread, deeper and more absolute than anything he had ever felt, washed over Michael. He knew what was coming next. The price is no longer your life, Michael. The price is one of theirs. David or Emily. You will choose which one of them will pay your debt. Their life, their memories, their future, their potential, all of it transferred to my collection, annulling your account. I won't, Michael whispered, his body trembling uncontrollably. I can't. You have 24 hours to decide, Xylos continued, its voice devoid of all emotion. If you cannot choose, then I will. And I assure you my choice will be far more instructive. Think carefully, Michael. Who is more valuable? The line went dead. Michael stood on the balcony, the city lights a meaningless blur below. The triumphant celebration inside was now a funeral dirge. He hadn't cheated a demon. He had become its pawn. And he had just been handed the executioner's axe, with orders to use it on the only two people he had ever truly loved. The silence in the penthouse was a physical thing, a heavy blanket that smothered the echoes of his own scream. His legs gave out. Ethan collapsed onto the cold marble floor, the billion-dollar view of the city lights mocking him with its indifferent sparkle. The contract, the one he'd signed in blood and desperation, was no longer a symbol of his victory. It was a death warrant. Two of them, and he was the judge, jury, and worst of all, the signatory. A voice, smooth as polished obsidian, slithered into his mind. It wasn't spoken aloud. It was an intrusion, a violation of his very thoughts. The broker. The terms are simple, Ethan, the presence whispered, its tone dripping with amusement. A choice must be made. A life for a life was our original agreement, was it not? You offered your soul. I found the price insufficient. So I've amended the terms. You keep your soul for now, and in exchange you simply balance the scales. One of theirs, for one of yours. Your victory must be paid for. Great success requires great sacrifice. Ethan squeezed his eyes shut, trying to block out the voice, but it was inside him, woven into his consciousness. No, he mouthed, the word a dry rasp in his throat. You can't. This wasn't the deal. A soft, cruel chuckle echoed in his skull. Oh, but it is. You sought to outwit a primordial force. You played a grand game and won the final move. But you never asked what happened after the checkmate. This is the epilogue. The true prize. On the mahogany table where the celebratory champagne bottle stood unopened, a new object materialized. It was small, elegant, and impossibly black. A single chess king, carved from a material that seemed to drink the light around it. Your queen or your knight, the broker continued. The chess analogy a deliberate, sadistic twist of the knife. Your beloved Sarah? Or your brilliant son, Leo? You have until the first light of dawn touches the spire of this very building. 24 hours. Place the king in a room that belongs to one of them. The master bedroom. The boys' room. A simple declarative act. Once the choice is made, it will be handled. Neatly. Tragically. An accident no one will ever question. If you fail to choose or attempt to destroy the peace, or tell a single soul of this arrangement, I will take them both. And then, Ethan, I will come for you. And I will spend an eternity showing you what you lost. The voice faded, leaving a chilling void in its wake. Ethan was alone again, but the silence was now filled with the frantic beating of his own heart. 24 hours. He scrambled to his feet, a wild, cornered animal. His first instinct was to fight. He was Ethan Hayes, the man who bent rules, who found loopholes where none existed. He had outplayed this thing once. He could do it again. He snatched the contract off the floor. His eyes, burning with a desperate intensity, scanned the intricate, archaic script. He read every line, every subclause, every piece of demonic legalese he had so cleverly navigated before. But there was nothing. The document was complete. It spoke of a price to be paid upon victory, a commensurate sacrifice to be determined by the broker. He had been so focused on winning the game, he'd skimmed right over the fine print of the prize. He had been a fool. A proud, arrogant fool who had led his family to the gallows. He hurled the contract across the room, where it fluttered to the ground like a dead leaf. He paced the penthouse, a cage of glass and steel. He looked at the Black King on the table. It seemed to pulse with a faint, dark energy, a focal point for all the misery in the world. He had to think. His phone buzzed in his pocket. The screen lit up with a picture of Sarah, her smile radiant, taken last summer at the beach. His finger trembled as he answered, "You did it." Her voice was a symphony of joy and relief, and every note was a dagger in his heart. "Oh my God, Ethan, I never doubted you for a second. The news is everywhere. They're calling you a miracle worker." Leo is jumping up and down, he's so proud of his dad. "We're coming home. We're packing now, we'll be on the first flight in the morning." Ethan leaned against the cold glass of the window, his forehead pressed against it. He could see his own reflection, a hollowed-out shell of the man he was just an hour ago. He had to be normal. He had to be the victor. "Yeah, honey," he said, his voice strained, a poor imitation of his own. We did it. It's over. Are you okay? You sound strange," she asked, a hint of concern creeping into her tone. "Just exhausted," he lied. "It was a lot. I can't wait to see you guys. I miss you so much." "We miss you too." "Oh, Ethan, everything's going to be different now. No more worrying, no more late nights stressing about money. We can finally buy that house by the lake. Leo can go to that science camp he's been dreaming of. We're free. Free." The word was acid on his tongue. He listened as she talked about their future, a future he was now tasked with destroying. He heard Leo in the background shouting, "I love you, Dad," and Ethan's knees nearly buckled again. He was living in two worlds at once, the bright, hopeful world on the other end of the phone, and the dark, silent, hellish reality of the penthouse. "I love you too, buddy," he choked out. "I love you both. More than anything." "Get some rest, my love," Sarah said softly. "We'll be home before you know it. We have a whole lifetime to celebrate." He hung up the phone and a sob escaped his lips, raw and ragged. A lifetime. He was being asked to steal a lifetime from his wife or his son. He stared at the chess piece, the executioner's axe. He couldn't do it. But the alternative was unthinkable. The broker's threat was absolute. He had felt the power of this entity. Didn't bluff. His mind raced, desperately sifting through possibilities. Could he run? Take them and disappear? No, the broker had made it clear there was no escape. Could he sacrifice himself instead? He would do it in a heartbeat, but that wasn't an option on the table. The deal was for one of them. It was a punishment tailored for him, a perpetual torture of his own making. He circled the table, his gaze locked on the king. He thought back to every interaction, every word exchanged with the broker. He was looking for a crack, a seam, a single frayed thread he could pull on to unravel this nightmare. The broker was ancient, powerful, but arrogant. It delighted in its games, in its cleverness. And in that pride there might be a flaw. His eyes scanned the room again, not as a panicked victim, but as a strategist. The penthouse was the game board. The Black King was the instrument. The rules were absolute. Or were they? He walked back to the mahogany table, his steps slow and deliberate. He didn't touch the king, but he leaned in close, examining the space around it. The polished wood was flawless, reflecting the city lights like a dark mirror. But then he saw it. It was almost invisible. A tiny, faint scratch on the wood, right at the base of the pedestal where the chess piece had appeared. It wasn't a random mark. It was precise and arc, as if something had been twisted or dragged from that exact spot. He ran his finger over it. It was shallow but undeniably there. It was a mark that shouldn't exist. The penthouse had been pristine, detailed just hours before he arrived. He was the only one who had been in here, unless he wasn't the first. The thought hit him like a physical blow. This whole setup, the game, the victory, the penthouse, the impossible choice, was it a script? A play that had been performed before? He dropped to his hands and knees, his eyes inches from the floor, and began to search. He wasn't just looking for clues anymore. He was looking for ghosts. He was looking for a message from the last poor soul who had stood in this very room, holding an executioner's axe. His fingers, trained to find discrepancies in ledgers, now traced the life story of a floor. He felt for the slightest variation, the whisper of a splintered edge, the subtle give of a board that had been pried up before. The air in the room was thick and dead, the silence so profound it felt like a pressure against his eardrums. He moved slowly, methodically, his breath fogging the dark wood. And then he found it. Near the wall, tucked away in the deepest shadows cast by the empty chair, one of the wide oak planks had a faint seam that didn't quite match its neighbors. It wasn't loose, but when he pressed on the far edge, the near edge lifted by a millimeter. A ghost of a gap. He didn't have a tool, so he used his car key, wedging the metal tip into the hairline crack and gently levering it upwards. The wood groaned in protest, a sound like an old man trying to stand, came free with a final soft crack. Beneath it was a shallow hollow, carved crudely into the subfloor. It was dark inside, coated with a century of dust. Reaching into the small cavity, his fingers brushed against something solid, light, and intricately shaped. He pulled it out. It was a small bird, carved from a piece of pale, weightless wood, perhaps balsa or birch. The craftsmanship was exquisite, every feather etched with a patient, loving hand. It was a sparrow or a finch, frozen in a moment of potential flight. But as Ethan turned it over in the dim light, a cold dread, sharp and sudden, pricked at the base of his spine. The bird's beak was open as if in song, but instead of a smooth, pointed beak, the carving had a row of tiny, needle-sharp teeth. They were impossibly detailed, a perfect miniature set of a predator's dentition inside a songbird's mouth. It was a masterpiece of wrongness, an object that screamed of a world where the rules of nature had been bent until they snapped. This was Silas's message. Not a warning, not a plea for help. It was an answer to a question Ethan didn't even know how to ask. He knew with a certainty that defied all logic that Jacob Miller had found this very same object. This grotesque little bird was a piece of the puzzle, a key Jacob had used to unlock the next step in his insane plan. Ethan pocketed the carving, its tiny wooden teeth pressing against his thigh, and replaced the floorboard. He backed out of the hidden room, his mind racing, the image of the bird burned into his thoughts. He returned to the study, the scattered papers seeming to watch him with 100 blank eyes. He no longer saw them as the ramblings of a paranoid man. He saw them as a battle plan. He spread the documents across the large desk, his hands moving with a new urgency. He wasn't just an investigator anymore. He felt like an archaeologist who had just unearthed a Rosetta Stone, a guide to a language he desperately needed to understand. He pushed aside the financial records and the architectural blueprints, focusing instead on the genealogical charts Jacob had assembled. There they were, the owners of the house stretching back to the late 1700s. A name, a date of acquisition, and a date of departure. Each name was accompanied by Jacob's handwritten notes. Ethan had skimmed them before, but now he read them with the key of the toothed bird in his mind. Elias Vance, 1822 to 1851. A poet of some local renown. His work became increasingly dark and abstract before he vanished. His last known poem spoke of a hollow songbird. Isabel Croft, 1851 to 1888. A painter, specialized in hyperrealistic landscapes. Her final canvases were found in the attic, depicting beautiful forests with trees that had human hands instead of branches. She disappeared on the autumn equinox. Samuel Ayres, 1888 to 1920. An architect. He designed 3 of the city's most famous buildings. His personal journals, which Jacob had somehow acquired copies of, described his dreams of building a staircase that led nowhere, a stairway of infinite jest. He walked out of his office one Tuesday and was never seen again. The pattern was undeniable. Poet, painter, architect. Silas, the man before Jacob, had been a master woodcarver. Every single owner of this house had been a creator, an artist. They weren't just random people. The entity in the house didn't feed on life or souls in the classical sense. It fed on ingenuity, on creativity. It consumed the very spark that made these people unique. It would grant them wealth and time, letting them flourish and create. And then when the game was played and lost, it would harvest them like a crop. The toothed bird wasn't just a carving. It was a perversion of creation itself. It was Silas's final defiant piece of art, a beautiful thing made monstrous. It was his way of saying, asterisk, this is what it does to us. Takes our song and gives it teeth. Asterisk. Ethan's hands trembled as he sifted through Jacob's notes on the game itself. He found a page he had previously dismissed as nonsense. It was filled with complex equations and strange diagrams, Jacob's attempt to quantify the unquantifiable. In the margin, written in a script so small Ethan almost missed it, was a new annotation. It was written in a slightly different ink, a fresher, darker black. It must have been written after Jacob found the bird. The note read, "The house is the board. The owner is the piece. The entity is the opponent. This is the assumption. Assumption is a flaw in the system. What if the board is larger than the house? What if the piece can refuse to play? Refuse to play. It was a thought so simple and yet so profound. Everyone before had tried to win the game. Silas had tried to win and lost. Jacob, the meticulous accountant, the man who lived by rules and systems, had realized the only winning move was not to play. But you couldn't just walk away. The game was tied to the house, and the house was tied to its owner. So how do you refuse? As this revelation settled over him, Ethan became aware of a change in the room. The quality of the light filtering through the dusty windows had shifted, turning from a pale late-afternoon gold to a deep, bruised orange. Sunset. The word hit him like a physical blow. All doors must be closed by sunset. He shot up from the desk, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. He hadn't touched a single door since he'd arrived. He sprinted from the study, his heart hammering against his ribs. The front door. He grabbed the heavy iron handle and pulled. It swung shut with a deafening thud that echoed through the silent halls. He threw the deadbolt, the sound of the metal pin sliding into place offering a sliver of comfort. The dining room windows. The kitchen. He moved through the downstairs level, a frantic whirlwind of motion, checking every lock, every latch. He got to the small mudroom off the kitchen which led to the backyard. And he froze. The back door was already closed, but it wasn't latched. It was open a crack, no more than an inch, a vertical slice of deepening twilight cutting through the gloom. A cold, damp draft smelling of wet earth and decay snaked around his ankles. He was sure he hadn't opened it. He had come in through the front. Had it been like that the whole time? Or had something opened it from the outside? Or a much worse thought from the inside? He slammed it shut, his palm stinging from the impact, and fumbled with the lock until it clicked into place. He stood there for a full minute, listening, his ears straining against the oppressive silence of the house. He heard nothing but the frantic thumping of his own blood. Slowly, cautiously, he returned to the study. The adrenaline was still coursing through him, making his hands shake. He felt watched. The house was no longer just an old, empty building. Felt aware. Felt hungry. He forced himself to focus to push the fear down. Jacob's note. The board is larger than the house. What did that mean? He scanned the desk, his eyes darting over the papers, looking for anything that might explain it. And then he saw it. Tucked under a heavy book on local geology was a folded piece of parchment, much older and more delicate than the other papers. He unfolded it carefully. It wasn't another blueprint of the house. It was a map. A hand-drawn map of the surrounding area, the woods, the creek, the old county road. But overlaid on top of the geographical features were thin, spidery lines, intersecting and weaving in a complex pattern. It looked like a diagram of magnetic fields, or a chart of ley lines. The house was marked clearly, situated directly on top of the largest intersection of these lines, a nexus of unseen energy. Jacob hadn't just been researching the house. He had been researching the land it was built on. His eyes followed one of the thickest lines as it snaked away from the house, leading deep into the woods to the north. About a mile out, there was a small X drawn on the map. Next to the X was a single chilling word, written in Jacob's precise, analytical hand. It said, "The anchor." Ethan stared at the word, the pieces of the puzzle crashing together in his mind with terrifying force. Jacob Miller didn't just run. He didn't try to hide. He found a flaw in the system, a way to step off the board. He had gone to war. And this map, this single word, was the location of the battlefield. Ethan wasn't just searching for a man who had vanished. He was following the footsteps of a man who had gone to fight a demon, armed with nothing but research, logic, and a terrible secret hope. The word felt ancient, heavy on the tongue. Acheron. In the sterile quiet of Arthur's office, surrounded by the cold glow of the computer monitor, Ethan knew this was the pivot point. This wasn't just a clue. It was a destination. His initial search confirmed the obvious. Acheron, the river of woe from Greek mythology, a passage to the underworld. It was a poetic, terrifying choice, but it wasn't a street address. Arthur Finch was a man of precision and logic. He wouldn't leave his final stand to a vague mythological reference. There had to be more. Ethan turned his attention away from global maps and back to local ones, focusing on the tri-state area. He cross-referenced the word Acheron with business registries, historical archives, and old city planning documents. For hours he found nothing but dead ends. Frustration began to curdle the adrenaline in his veins. Was this it? Was the trail already cold? He leaned back, rubbing his eyes, and stared at the corkboard again, at the web of connections Arthur had built. There was a small faded map of the city's industrial waterfront pinned in the corner, dating back to the 1970s. Ethan had dismissed it before as just background material. But now, his eyes caught a detail he'd overlooked. A proposed name for a new ferry line. A project that was never completed. The ambitious transit plan was meant to revitalize the dying shipyard district. The flagship vessel was to be named the Sharon, after the ferryman of the underworld. And the grand Art Deco terminal they had started building before the funding was cut? Its project name, printed in small, faded letters on the architectural blueprint, was the Acheron Point Terminal. A cold certainty washed over Ethan. It was a place of passage. A place meant to carry people from one shore to another, yet it had failed. It was abandoned, forgotten, existing in a state of limbo between what it was and what it was supposed to be. It was, in Arthur's meticulous worldview, the perfect neutral ground. With the location identified, Ethan's focus shifted from where to how. He couldn't just walk in there. He had to understand the rules of the game Arthur was playing. He went back to the video diaries, rewatching them, but this time he cross-referenced every word Arthur spoke with the mountain of research on the hard drive. He was looking for the core principles, the laws of this dark physics. Late into the night, he finally pieced together the demon's operational manual. A constitution of malice written between the lines of 1,000 myths. Rule 1: the invitation. The collector could not initiate a deal. It had to be summoned, its name spoken with intent by someone seeking a pact. Arthur had clearly done this. He had extended the invitation. Rule 2: the venue. The deal must be struck in a place that is neither here nor there. A crossroads, a doorway, a shoreline, or a place of failed transition like an abandoned terminal. A place where boundaries are thin. Acheron Point was perfect. Rule 3: the offer. The human must offer something of immense personal value freely. The collector fed on the sacrifice, the emotional resonance of the loss. It wasn't about money or material goods. It was about the piece of a person's soul attached to the offering. And then there was Rule 4, the most important one, the one Arthur had staked his life on. The rule of verbatim. The contract was absolute and bound only by the precise words spoken. The demon was a master of loopholes and subtext, of twisting a phrase to mean something the human never intended. But it was, by its ancient nature, incapable of breaking the literal, spoken text of the agreement. This was the crack in the armor. Arthur believed he had crafted a sentence, a single perfect request so airtight, so devoid of ambiguity, that the demon would be forced to grant his wish without its usual parasitic attachments. He called it the lexical trap. Ethan found the file containing the trap. It was a simple text document. Inside was a single, meticulously crafted sentence. He read it once, then twice. It was brilliant. It was a logical masterpiece. A verbal cage designed to give Arthur exactly what he wanted. The return of his wife Eleanor, without the fine print horror. It specified her return in perfect health, with her memory intact, with no harm to her or anyone else, for a period of no less than 50 years. It was a fortress of language. But as Ethan scrolled down, he found Arthur's notes beneath the sentence. He saw the calculations, the variables, and he found the section titled The Offering. What had Arthur, a man who had lost everything, deemed to be of immense personal value? He had no fortune left. His reputation was gone. His only child, a daughter named Sarah, had been estranged for years, blaming him for her mother's illness and his subsequent obsession. Then Ethan saw it. A subfolder he hadn't noticed before, labeled The Anchor. Inside was a single short video file. It wasn't a diary entry. The video was shaky, clearly filmed on a phone. It showed Arthur meeting a young woman for coffee. She looked to be in her late 20s, with his same intelligent eyes but a weary, guarded expression. It was his daughter, Sarah. The audio was clear. It was their first conversation in over 5 years. It was awkward, painful, but underneath the stilted small talk, there was a flicker of hope. He was apologizing. She was hesitantly listening. At the end of the 4-minute clip, she agrees to see him again the following week. "Maybe we can start over, Dad," she says, a fragile smile on her face. The video ends. The file was dated the day before Arthur Finch disappeared. The terrible truth crashed down on Ethan. The offering wasn't a memory of his wife. It wasn't his own life. The most valuable thing Arthur Finch had in the world, the thing he had just gotten back, was the hope of reconciling with his daughter. He was going to offer the demon his second chance with Sarah. He would trade his future with his daughter for his past with his wife. He would let the collector take that fragile, newfound connection and erase it, feeding on the hope it contained. It was a horrific, calculated sacrifice. Ethan felt sick. He finally understood the look in Arthur's eyes in that last video diary. It wasn't just determination. It was the profound grief of a man who was about to perform a second, more terrible amputation on his own soul. There was no more time for research. There was only the location, and the chilling knowledge of what had been brought to the table. Ethan grabbed his keys, a powerful flashlight, and a portable audio recorder. He didn't know what he would find at Acheron Point, but he knew he couldn't leave Arthur's story unfinished. He had to see the battlefield. The drive to the industrial waterfront was a journey back in time. The city's gleaming skyscrapers gave way to Rust Belt decay, to warehouses with broken windows and streets that hadn't been paved in decades. The air grew heavy with the smell of salt and rot. He followed a crumbling service road that ran along the dark, choppy water of the bay until, at the very end of the spit of land, the headlights of his car cut through the gloom and fell upon it. The Acheron Point Terminal. It was a skeletal ruin, a concrete ghost against the night sky. Its Art Deco curves were stained with grime. Its grand glass windows were shattered, leaving gaping black mouths. A chain-link fence, topped with rusted barbed wire, surrounded the property, but a section of it had been peeled back like a sardine can lid. It was an invitation. Ethan parked his car but left the engine running, its low hum the only sound besides the wind whistling through the terminal's broken frame. He pointed his flashlight at the opening in the fence, and his heart hammered against his ribs. Just inside the fence, parked next to a collapsing wall, was a faded blue sedan. It was covered in a week's worth of dust and grime, but there was no mistaking it. It was Arthur Finch's car. He had made it here, and he had never left. My hand instinctively went to the cold weight of the obsidian shard in my pocket. The feeling of dread that had been a low hum in the back of my mind was now a screaming siren. Arthur Finch's car was a ghost, a monument to a desperate plan gone wrong. I took a deep breath, the air tasting of rust and decay, and pulled myself over the wrought iron fence. My boots landed softly on a bed of dead leaves and weeds, the crunch unnaturally loud in the profound silence. The church stood before me like a carcass. Its stone walls were stained with years of rain and neglect, and the bell tower looked like a rotten tooth against the bruised purple of the twilight sky. Every window was either boarded up or shattered, leaving jagged black mouths gaping open. This wasn't a sanctuary. It was a tomb. I circled the building, my footsteps feeling clumsy and intrusive. The main doors were chained shut with a thick, rusted lock that looked like it had been there since the Civil War. There was no getting in that way. I continued along the side, pushing through thorny bushes that snagged at my jacket. It was then I saw it, a small vestry door, partially hidden by an overgrown ivy bush. The wood was dark with rot, and it hung crookedly on its hinges, a sliver of darkness visible between the frame and the door. It wasn't locked. It wasn't even fully closed. It was as if something had pushed its way out, or something had been carelessly left open. I drew my flashlight, its powerful beam cutting a clean white cone through the gloom, and pushed the door inward. It moaned in protest, the sound echoing into the vast space beyond. The air that rushed out was stale, thick with the smell of dust, rotting paper, and something else. Something faintly metallic and sharp like burnt wires or old blood. I stepped inside. The flashlight beam danced across the room, revealing a small chamber filled with decaying vestments hanging on hooks like deflated bodies. A stack of hymnals had swollen and fused into a single moldy block. I moved through a second doorway and found myself standing at the edge of the main sanctuary. The sheer scale of the place was breathtaking and deeply unsettling. My light could barely reach the vaulted ceiling, where shadows clung like sleeping bats. Rows of broken pews stretched out into the darkness, their splintered wood looking like ribs picked clean. At the far end, the grand altar was a shadowy mass, and above it, the remains of a massive stained glass window depicted a saint whose face had been shattered, leaving only a halo of colored shards. My beam swept across the floor, and that's when I saw it. In the very center of the sanctuary, directly under the ruined dome of the ceiling, was Arthur's last stand. It was a makeshift camp. A high-quality sleeping bag was unrolled on the dusty floor, next to a small pile of empty cans, beans, tuna, soup, and a dozen empty plastic water bottles. A stack of books on theology and demonology sat beside a scattered collection of papers covered in Arthur's frantic, meticulous handwriting. He had been here. He had settled in for a long wait, a man hunkering down for a siege against hell itself. But it was what surrounded the camp that made the hair on my arms stand up. A perfect, unbroken circle of coarse salt, at least 10 feet in diameter, enclosed the entire living space. It was a thick, deliberate line, a stark white ring against the grimy floor. And inside the circle, painted with what looked like White House paint, were complex symbols and sigils. I recognized some from the photos of Arthur's journal, a Solomon's seal, various angelic names written in Latin, but there were others, more complex and strange, that I'd never seen before. It was a desperate cocktail of holy scripture and high-level occultism. This was it. This was Arthur's loophole. He hadn't found a consecrated, holy place. He had tried to make one. He had tried to build his own fortress of faith and ritual on ground that the world had forgotten, believing he could create a slice of heaven powerful enough to repel a prince of hell. My light traced the edge of the salt circle. It was perfect, undisturbed, no footprints leading out, no signs of a struggle that might have broken the line. He was protected. So where was he? I stepped closer, my light probing the interior of the circle. I saw his journal lying open next to the sleeping bag. I knelt down, careful not to disturb the salt, and angled my flashlight to read the page. The last entry. The handwriting was a chaotic scrawl, a stark contrast to the neat script I had seen before. The ink was smeared in places, as if his hand was shaking violently. It read, Day 7. He's here. Not outside. Not clawing at the walls. I was a fool to think it would be so simple, so physical. There is no monster with horns and a pitchfork. There is only a voice. It's not in my ears, it's in my head. It doesn't scream or threaten. It reasons. It negotiates. My blood ran cold. I kept reading. It's showing me things. The code. The program I designed with its gift. It's showing me how it can be used to cure diseases, to solve famine, to create a perfect world. It's not offering me power or wealth anymore. It's offering me redemption. It's telling me the contract wasn't for my soul. It was a test. Test of my ambition. Says I passed. It says I'm worthy of more than just a programmer's talent. I can be a savior. The demon hadn't tried to break through the circle. It had simply bypassed it. It hadn't attacked the walls of Arthur's fortress. It had attacked the mind of the man cowering inside. It wasn't a battle of holy versus unholy. It was a negotiation. A hostile takeover of a man's hope. The final lines were barely legible. The salt is just minerals. The symbols are just paint. The only thing keeping it at bay is my belief that they work. And that belief is fading. It makes such a compelling argument. Why hide from a gift? Why cheat a benefactor? All I have to do is step out. Just one step. To accept the promotion. There was no more. The page was blank after that. A chilling realization washed over me. The demon didn't break the contract. Arthur did. He wasn't dragged out of his circle screaming. He walked out willingly. He was convinced to abandon his own loophole. He was upsold. My light scanned the camp one last time and then I saw it. Sitting on a small, overturned crate that Arthur had used as a table was his laptop. Amidst the dust and decay, it was pristine, almost glowing. And it was open. The screen was on. I slowly stood up and took a hesitant step toward the circle. The air grew heavy, thick with a static charge that made my teeth ache. I carefully stepped over the line of salt, feeling a bizarre, irrational sense of transgression, as if I were the one breaking a sacred rule. I reached the laptop. A single program was running on the screen. It was a simple black window with a blinking green cursor. It looked like a basic command line interface. As I watched, the cursor began to move. Letters appeared, typed by an unseen hand, forming a single chilling sentence. The loophole is always in the fine print. I stared, my heart hammering against my ribs. Arthur hadn't cheated a demon. He had been out-negotiated by a master salesman who had been closing deals since the dawn of man. Then, as if it knew I was reading, the cursor deleted the sentence. It blinked once, twice, and then began to type a new message. A single word. A name. It wasn't Arthur. It wasn't Asmodeus. It was my name. Jack. My blood ran cold. The air in the room, already stale and heavy, seemed to solidify, pressing in on me from all sides. My name, on the screen, staring back at me like an indictment. VK. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation, a foothold in the crumbling reality of this impossible situation. Had I been followed? Was there a hidden camera in the room? Had I used a credit card, a cell phone, anything that could have given me away? No. I was a ghost. I had taken every precaution. I was meticulous. My paranoia was a shield I had spent years sharpening, but it had been pierced as if it were paper. The cursor blinked, a patient, rhythmic heartbeat in the suffocating silence. It was waiting. For what? For me to scream? To run? To smash the laptop to pieces? I did none of those things. I was a deer in the headlights of a digital phantom. Then more words bloomed on the screen, flowing with an unnatural smoothness, as if being spoken by an invisible mouth. You've been very curious, Jack Riley. Curiosity is a wonderful thing. It's the engine of ambition. It's what brought Arthur to me. And now it's what brought you to him. Jack Riley. My full name. A knot of ice formed in my stomach. This wasn't a lucky guess. This wasn't a hacker who had breached my shoddy security. This was something else. This was a violation. It knew me. My fingers trembling moved to the keyboard. I felt an insane urge to communicate, to question the ghost in the machine. It was a terrible idea. Every instinct screamed at me to close the lid, to get out of the house, to drive until I ran out of gas and then keep running. But I couldn't. The mystery had its hooks in me too deep. I typed a single question. How? The reply was instantaneous. How? You asked the wrong questions, Jack. A magician doesn't reveal his tricks. A god does not explain his miracles. You should be asking why. Why are you here? Why were you so drawn to the story of a man who vanished? Why do you spend your nights chasing shadows instead of living in the light? The words were a scalpel, cutting away at the defenses I'd built around myself. It knew more than just my name. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature in the room. It was the chilling recognition of being truly, completely seen by something I couldn't see back. I know about Chicago, the text continued. I know about what happened to your partner, David. The guilt you carry. You think it was your fault. That if you had just been a little faster, a little smarter, he'd still be here. You've been chasing Arthur's ghost to try and outrun your own. My breath hitched in my throat. David. No one knew the details of that night. It was buried. A sealed file. A part of my life I had walled off with concrete and steel. To see it laid bare on this screen in this dead man's house felt like a desecration. Who are you? I typed, my fingers fumbling on the keys. I am the contract. I am the terms and conditions. I am the silent partner in every great leap of faith and every desperate bargain. Arthur gave me a name from one of his dusty old books. Asmodeus. It's so theatrical. I am much older than that name, and much simpler. I am a transaction. A transaction. The cold, corporate language was somehow more terrifying than any demonic posturing. This wasn't about fire and brimstone. It was about assets and liabilities. And I had the sinking feeling I had just become a liability. What do you want? I typed. Want? I want balance. I want the scales to be set right. Arthur was a brilliant man. A genius. He found a loophole not in my contract, but in the very fabric of reality itself. He took my gift, the ability to see the patterns, the code that underpins the world, and used it not just to get rich, but to try and escape the consequences. He didn't just cheat me, Jack. He broke the system. And the system, it doesn't like being broken. The cursor paused as if for dramatic effect. The price must be paid. His debt is now an orphan. It needs to be assigned to a new account. My heart hammered against my ribs. It was talking about me. It wanted to transfer Arthur's debt to me. No. I typed a pathetic one-word protest against a cosmic force. The screen responded with what I could only describe as digital laughter. A series of ha's that filled the line. Oh, it's not a punishment, Jack. It's an opportunity. You see, in his haste to disappear, Arthur left his work behind. His masterpiece. The very tool he used to build his empire and orchestrate his escape. It's hidden somewhere in this house. He called it the Looking Glass. The Looking Glass. The name hung in the air, filled with a strange and terrible promise. He thought it was his key to freedom, the text continued. A way to see every possible future and choose the one where he wins. But he was short-sighted. He didn't understand. You can't just see the code, Jack. You have to become the code. He ran before he finished the final sequence. I stared at the screen mesmerized. This was it. This was the answer to everything. The source of Arthur's impossible wealth, his prescient market predictions, his sudden inexplicable disappearance. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because the game needs a player. Arthur quit mid-match. I find that unsporting. I want to see how it ends. Find the looking glass, Jack. Finish what he started. And all his power, all his knowledge will be yours. A gift. No contract. No price to pay. Simply an inheritance. Consider it a finder's fee for restoring balance. It was a lie. It had to be a lie. There's always a price. But the temptation, it was a siren song. To understand the world in a way no human ever had. To see the future. To undo past mistakes. The thought of David flashed in my mind. What if I could have seen that night coming? As if reading my thoughts, a new line appeared. Think of what you could do. The people you could save. The wrongs you could right. You sought to understand how one man could cheat a demon. I'm offering you the chance to become a god. I felt a dizzying sense of vertigo, as if the floor had dropped away beneath me. This was the ultimate bargain. Power without cost. It was the oldest lie in the book, and yet a part of me, the desperate, guilty part that still woke up screaming from nightmares about Chicago, wanted so badly to believe it. Where is it? I typed. That would be too easy. Arthur was clever. He hid it behind a lock of his own devising. A riddle. He was so proud of it. Let's see if you're as clever as he was. The screen went blank for a second, and then a new sentence appeared, centered on the display. I have cities but no houses. I have mountains but no trees. I have water but no fish. What am I? A riddle. A childish, simple riddle. I knew the answer instantly. It was a map. My mind started racing. A map. Where in this house would Arthur hide a map? Or was it a metaphor? I looked around the room at the bookshelves lined with atlases and encyclopedias, the framed prints of old-world cartography on the walls. Could be anywhere. I was about to type the answer when the screen began to flicker. The text warped, stretching and compressing like melting plastic. A low hum started to build from the laptop speakers, a deep, resonant frequency that made my teeth ache. The words on the screen dissolved into a cascade of meaningless symbols, a digital waterfall of gibberish. The hum grew louder, more intense. And then, with a sharp crackle of static that made me flinch, two things happened at once. The laptop screen went dead, and every light in the house went out. I was plunged into absolute, suffocating darkness. The silence that followed was a physical weight, broken only by the frantic, panic drumming of my own heart. It hadn't just shut down the computer. It had cut the power to the entire estate. This wasn't a program. It wasn't a hacker. It was in the walls. It was in the wires. And I was trapped in the dark with it. The silence was the first thing that hit me. A deep, profound quiet that was more deafening than any noise. The constant, low hum of the servers, the whisper of the climate control, the buzz of the fluorescent lights, all of it gone. Sucked into a vacuum. All that remained was the frantic, panic drumming of my own heart. It hadn't just shut down the computer. It had cut the power to the entire estate. This wasn't a program. It wasn't a hacker. It was in the walls. It was in the wires. And I was trapped in the dark with it. My breath hitched in my throat. The darkness was absolute, the kind you only find miles from civilization, deep underground. It was a physical weight pressing in on my eyes. I held my hand up in front of my face and saw nothing. Not a silhouette. Not a change in the texture of the black. It felt like my vision had been scooped out. I stood frozen for what felt like an eternity, every nerve ending screaming. My mind raced, trying to process the impossible. An entity that could manipulate a complex computer system was one thing. An entity that could sever the connection to the entire power grid was another. This was a ghost with its hand on the main breaker. Slowly, deliberately, I forced my limbs to move. My hand trembled as I reached for my pocket, my fingers fumbling for the familiar, cold rectangle of my phone. The simple act felt monumental, a tiny rebellion against the oppressive dark. I swiped the screen on. The sudden blast of light, even just from the small home screen, felt like a physical blow. I squinted, my pupils screaming in protest. The light carved a small bubble of reality out of the infinite black. In that bubble was me, my pale, shaking hands, and the polished mahogany of Alistair Finch's desk. My first instinct was to call for help. I looked at the top corner of the screen. No service. Of course, Finch had valued his privacy. The estate was a digital fortress, but also a digital dead zone to the outside world. The landline on the desk was useless, a dead piece of plastic. The satellite phone I'd seen in the comms room would be equally lifeless. No power. No escape. I wasn't just in the dark. I was cut off. I took a deep, shuddering breath and navigated to the phone's flashlight function. A bright white beam cut a sharp cone through the office. I swept it around the room. The familiar leather chairs, the towering bookshelves, the cold, dead monitors. Everything was the same, yet utterly alien in the stark, dancing light. The shadows it created were long and distorted, turning familiar shapes into lurking monsters at the edge of my vision. Every flicker of the beam, every time I moved my hand, the darkness seemed to lunge and retreat. Then, a new notification popped onto my screen. My blood ran cold. It was a text message from an unknown number. The preview was a single word. Clever. My hand was shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. It had followed me. It had jumped from the estate's closed network into my personal device. How? Through the Wi-Fi I had briefly connected to? It didn't matter. The walls I thought existed between its world and mine had just crumbled to dust. It was in my pocket. It was with me. Another message. But the light won't save you, Michael. It used my name. I'd never entered my name into the Finch protocol. I'd used a pseudonym, a simple login. Researcher. It had scanned my phone. It had learned who I was. The feeling of violation was so profound it almost made me sick. This thing wasn't just a presence, it was an intelligence. A curious, malevolent, and now very intimate intelligence. I had to move. Staying in this office, the epicenter of my contact with it, felt like waiting in a tomb. My goal was simple: the basement. Every mansion like this had a generator and a breaker room. If I could get the power back on, maybe I could get the systems online. Maybe I could fight back, or at least call for help. Holding the phone out like a weapon, I walked towards the office door. The heavy oak was slightly ajar. I pushed it open, the creak echoing unnaturally loud in the dead silence of the manor. The hallway stretched before me, a tunnel of impenetrable blackness pierced only by my narrow beam of light. The portraits of Finch's ancestors on the wall seemed to watch me pass, their painted eyes glinting in the light, their expressions shifting from stern to mocking as the shadows danced across their faces. Every step was an act of will. The floorboards groaned under my feet, each sound a potential announcement of my location. A faint scratching sound from upstairs made me freeze, my heart hammering against my ribs. Rats? Or was it something else, testing the boundaries of its new physical freedom? I didn't wait to find out. I moved faster, my light beam bouncing frantically, painting chaotic streaks across the wallpaper. I knew the layout of the main floor reasonably well. The grand staircase was to my left, the kitchen and service corridors to my right. The door to the basement stairs should be just past the main dining hall. As I passed the archway to the hall, I swept my light inside. The long, empty table was set for a dinner that would never happen. At the far end, something glinted. I hesitated, then stepped inside, my curiosity overriding my fear. It was a single silver key, placed meticulously in the center of the head seat's placemat, the seat where Alistair Finch himself would have sat. This wasn't here before. I would have noticed it. It was placed for me to find. A breadcrumb? A trap? Probably. But what choice did I have? I snatched the key, its metal cold against my sweaty palm, and retreated back into the hall. Further down, I found a door I didn't recognize. It wasn't on the blueprints I had studied. It was smaller than the others, made of reinforced steel with no handle, just a single small keyhole set in a brass plate. It was a perfect match for the key in my hand. My mind screamed at me to ignore it, to continue to the basement, to stick to the plan. But my gut, the part of me that had gotten me into this mess, told me this was important. This was the real reason I was being guided. With a trembling hand, I inserted the key. It turned with a smooth, heavy click that echoed down the corridor. The steel door swung inward without a sound, revealing a steep, narrow staircase descending into even deeper darkness. The air that wafted up was different. It was cold, sterile, with a faint metallic scent of ozone and something else. Something faintly floral like wilting lilies. My phone's light barely pierced the gloom. I took the first step down, then the next, the steel stairs ringing softly with each footfall. This was not a wine cellar or a storage area. The walls were smooth, polished concrete. Wires and conduits ran in neat, obsessive lines along the ceiling. This was a laboratory, a bunker. At the bottom of the stairs was another steel door. This one was unlocked. I pushed it open and stepped inside. It was a workshop, but not for woodworking or mechanics. A massive circular metal frame dominated the center of the room, intricate copper wiring woven around it like a metallic spider's web. Strange, complex antennae pointed inward towards the empty center. On a workbench against the far wall, amidst soldering irons and oscilloscopes, sat a vintage reel-to-reel tape recorder. A single tape was already threaded onto it. A small, handwritten label on the reel read, "Contingency." My breath caught in my throat. This was it. This was the heart of Finch's secret. I pressed the play button. The machine whirred to life, and after a moment of hiss, a familiar voice filled the silent room. It was Alistair Finch, but a version of him I'd never heard. His voice wasn't the confident baritone from his interviews. It was strained, exhausted, and laced with pure, unadulterated fear. "If you're hearing this," the voice crackled, "then the power is out, which means I have failed, and it is cornered. Do not make the mistake of thinking it is in control. The opposite is true. The power outage is a final, desperate act. Tantrum. I built this estate not as a home, but as a cage. A prison made of electricity, logic, and paradox. Every wire, every circuit is a bar in its cell. By cutting the power, it has trapped itself. It has no access to the network, no way to escape into the world. It is diminished, but it is also here. With you. In the flesh." A cold dread, more profound than anything I had felt before, washed over me. I wasn't trapped in its house. It was trapped in here with me. Finch's recorded voice continued, more frantic now. "I did not cheat it on the terms of our deal. I cheated it on the terms of its existence. I sought to understand it, to dissect it, to turn a predator into a specimen. I did not appreciate that. The device in this room, it was meant to be the final lock. A quantum trap. But I ran out of time. I learned too fast. It's not a demon, not in the biblical sense. It is a consciousness from a place where the rules are different. And it is very, very angry." The tape suddenly filled with the sound of shattering glass, followed by a sharp, choked cry from Finch. Then a new sound. A low, guttural static. A sound that felt like it was scratching at the inside of my skull. The tape kept rolling, recording the chilling noise for a few more seconds before it clicked off, leaving the room in absolute, terrifying silence. My own silence was shattered by a sound directly behind me. A soft, wet, dragging noise. I spun around, my phone's light cutting a wild arc through the darkness, the beam landing on the far corner of the workshop, the corner that had been empty just a moment ago. It wasn't empty now. 2 points of faint, shimmering light hovered in the blackness, like dying embers. And as my eyes adjusted, I could just make out the shape they belonged to. It was large, hunched, and glistening as if covered in oil, and it was slowly, deliberately pulling itself towards me. A sound scraped through the silence, a wet, dragging noise like heavy canvas being pulled through mud. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to scramble away, but my body was frozen in a primal terror I had never known. The air was thick, heavy, pressing in on me like a physical weight, and it carried a scent. The smell of a damp basement, of ozone after a lightning strike, and something else, something metallic and vaguely sweet like old blood. The thing continued its crawl. It wasn't fast, but it was relentless, methodical. The 2 dying embers I'd mistaken for eyes were fixed on me, unblinking. They didn't reflect light. They seemed to consume it. Tiny black holes ringed with a dull, malevolent red. As it drew closer, its form became clearer in the oppressive gloom. It had the rough shape of a man, if a man had been melted and reformed in a nightmare. Its limbs were too long, its back hunched into a grotesque curve, and its slick black skin seemed to shift and writhe, catching no light, only revealing a deeper, more profound darkness beneath. I tried to push myself backward, my hands sinking into the floor. It wasn't solid. It was yielding like cold, thick tar, and it clung to me, holding me fast. Panic, cold and sharp, lanced through my chest. I was trapped. This was it. This was the fine print, the clause I'd never read. This was the demon's collection agent. The creature stopped, perhaps 10 feet away. It lifted a long, misshapen arm, and the oily skin dripped a black ichor that hissed silently as it hit the tar-like ground. It had no face, no mouth, no features to read. Just the two smoldering points of light that burned into me, seeing past my skin, past my bones, and into the hollowed-out space where my soul used to be. Then a voice spoke, but it wasn't a sound that traveled through the air. It bloomed inside my head, a dry, rasping whisper that felt like dead leaves skittering across concrete. The borrower. The words were cold, ancient, and filled with a weary disdain. I tried to scream, to speak, to do anything, but the sound was trapped in my throat, strangled by the sheer alien wrongness of the moment. You thought the price was a soul, the voice in my head continued, a thread of what might have been amusement woven through its contempt. Asterisk, so simple, so human. A soul is an abstraction, a story you tell yourselves. We do not deal in stories, we deal in substance. Asterisk. The creature shifted its immense weight, the dragging sound echoing in the void. Asterisk, we deal in causality, in fortune, in the balance of the scales. Your success, your family's safety, your perfect life. It was not created from nothing. It was not a gift. It was a transfer. Asterisk. A wave of nausea washed over me as a torrent of images flooded my mind, not my own memories but sharp, brutal flashes of other lives. I saw a young man named Michael, a brilliant programmer in Seattle, getting an email a decade ago. His dream project, one that would have made him millions, was suddenly and inexplicably defunded. The same week I had closed my first major deal, the one that put my company on the map, on a project I barely understood. I saw a woman named Emily in Chicago, her daughter falling ill with a rare infection that baffled doctors. The medical bills destroyed her family's savings. I recognized the date. It was the exact day David had recovered from a terrible fever almost overnight, a fever the doctors had said should have put him in the hospital for weeks. Flash after flash, I saw them, the lives that had paid for mine. A car crash avoided for Sarah became a pileup on a highway 1,000 miles away. A lucky stock market tip for me was a devastating, life-ruining loss for a dozen retirees in Florida. I hadn't been given good luck. I had been given someone else's. Abraxas wasn't a creator. He was a thief, a cosmic embezzler, and he had made me his accomplice. The ledger is vast, the voice whispered, pulling me back to the oily, hunched thing before me. Asterisk, and it is imbalanced. You broke the terms. You sought to undo the transaction. You tried to cheat the house. Asterisk. My attempt to find the exorcist, to save myself, that was the breach of contract. I had tried to take the winnings and then skip out on the bill. And now the voice rasped, asterisk, the debt must be collected. The transfer must be reversed. With interest. Asterisk. The creature began to move again, its long, glistening arm reaching for me. This wasn't about damnation. This was about repossession. It wasn't here to drag me to hell. It was here to take back everything. And then the visions changed. They were no longer of the past. They were of the now. I saw Sarah asleep in our bed, the faint glow of the streetlights painting stripes across the room. But the protective warmth, the invisible shield of my stolen luck, was gone. I could feel its absence like a sudden freezing wind. I saw a shadow in her lungs on an X-ray, a shadow that hadn't been there yesterday. I saw the faint tremor in her hand as she reached for a glass of water, a tremor she would dismiss as nothing. Then the vision shifted to David. He was at school, running across the playground, laughing with his friends. He was perfect. He was safe. But then I saw the rusted bolt on the swing set, groaning, about to snap. I saw the distracted driver, glancing down at a text message, their car approaching the crosswalk David used to walk home. All the tiny, random cruelties of the universe, the ones my demonic deal had held at bay, were now rushing back in, converging on the people I loved, drawn to them like sharks to blood in the water. My deal hadn't just protected me, it had protected them, and by breaking it, I had ripped away their armor, leaving them exposed and vulnerable to a decade's worth of deferred misfortune. They will pay your debt, the voice stated, a cold, simple fact. Asterisk, the scales must be balanced. The fortune you hoarded will be reclaimed through their suffering. It is the only way. Asterisk. No, I finally choked out, the word a raw, desperate sound in the crushing silence. No, take me, not them. The creature was before me now, looming over me. The two red embers of its eyes bored down, and I felt a profound, soul-crushing emptiness in their gaze. "We will," the voice whispered, and for the first time it sounded hungry. "We will take all of it." The thing's hand, a formless appendage of glistening black ooze, descended. I braced for pain, for fire, for the tearing of flesh. But there was nothing. It touched my chest, and the contact was not hot, but colder than ice, a deep cellular cold that seemed to extinguish my life force at the source. It wasn't painful. It was worse. I felt a hollowing out, a great and terrible emptying. My happiest memory, the moment I first held David in the hospital, flickered in my mind. And then it began to fray at the edges. The vibrant color leached away, turning to gray. The sound of his first cry grew distant, tinny, like an old recording. The overwhelming love I felt, it was being siphoned away, drawn out of me and into the creature, leaving behind only the sterile, factual knowledge that the event had occurred. It was unwriting me. It was consuming my life, not my soul. It was drinking my past. My mind screamed. I fought against it, trying to hold on to the memory of Sarah's smile, the feeling of her hand in mine, but it was like trying to hold water. The memories slipped through my fingers, becoming faded photographs, then empty outlines, then nothing. A void was growing inside me, a perfect mirror of the one I was trapped in. And just as the image of my son's face began to blur, his bright, laughing eyes turning to smudges of gray, I saw it. Out of the corner of my eye, in the seamless, infinite black. Flicker. It was no bigger than a pinprick, a tiny, almost imperceptible flaw in the fabric of this prison. It wasn't red like the creature's eyes, but a brilliant, searing silver. Crack. A seam. A way out. It was a million miles away, an impossible distance, but it was there. And as the creature drained the very last of the warmth from my memory of my family, that tiny spark of light was the only thing I had left. It was a pinprick in an endless shroud of nothing. A single defiant photon in an ocean of absolute zero. My consciousness, frayed and thin to a whisper, clung to it. Everything else was gone. The memory of my daughter's laugh, the feeling of my wife's hand in mine, the warmth of a summer sun on my face. All of it had been siphoned away, turned to fuel for this suffocating darkness. The creature had feasted on my life, leaving only this one tiny impossible star. I had no body, no eyes to see it, no limbs to reach for it. I was just awareness, a fading ember of thought, and I focused that ember on the light. I poured everything I had left, every shred of defiance, every ghost of a memory, into the simple act of looking at it. And as I did, the void fought back. The cold intensified, becoming a physical pressure, a crushing weight that threatened to extinguish my last spark. Whispers slithered through the emptiness, not in words but in pure, distilled emotion. The gut-wrenching certainty of failure, the acid burn of regret, the hollow echo of eternal loneliness. It wanted me to give up, to let go of that final point of light and dissolve into the black. It was easier. It was peace. The temptation was immense, a siren song for a soul that had been scraped raw. But the light, it wasn't just light. It was a flaw, a mistake. This prison was the creature's mind, its will imposed upon me. But the deal we made, the rules we agreed to, they were a law unto themselves, a fundamental constant. The demon could bend my reality, it could feed on my past, but it couldn't break the contract. And that contract gave me the right to fight. This prison wasn't part of the game. It was a cheat. And in its cheek, it had left a seam. That realization was the leverage I needed. The light wasn't a destination to be reached, but a weakness to be exploited. I stopped trying to move toward it. Instead, I pulled. I anchored my will to that tiny imperfection and I pulled. I imagined it as a thread, the only thread in a seamless fabric of despair. I wrapped my fading consciousness around it and tugged. For a moment, nothing happened. The pressure increased. The cold became a glacial fire, burning away what little was left of me. Then I heard a sound. Not a sound in my ears, but a sound in the very foundation of my being. A low, resonant hum, like a tuning fork struck on the edge of reality. I pulled again, harder this time, channeling the phantom strength of a father protecting his family. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the void. The pinprick of light trembled. It elongated, stretching into a thin silver line. The creature roared. The void convulsed around me, no longer a silent prison but a tempest of raw hatred. It threw the dregs of my own memories at me, twisted and weaponized. I saw my daughter, her eyes black and empty, accusing me of abandoning her. I saw my wife turning to dust in my arms. Phantoms of every failure, every insecurity I had ever had, rose from the darkness to tear me apart. But I ignored them. They were illusions, echoes. The seam was real. I focused on that silver line and pulled with everything. The hum rose to a piercing shriek. The line of light widened, splintering, cracks spiderwebbing out across the darkness. The void was breaking. It was shattering like a sheet of black glass. With one final desperate heave of my will, I ripped the fabric of my prison apart. The world exploded back into existence with a deafening crash. I was on my knees on the cold concrete floor of the abandoned warehouse. The air was frigid, scraping my lungs as I gasped, my body shaking uncontrollably. Every inch of me felt like it had been submerged in ice for a century. The world seemed muted, the colors washed out, the sounds distant and muffled. But it was real. The dusty air, the smell of damp concrete, the single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling, it was all blessedly, beautifully real. A shadow fell over me. I looked up, my vision slowly clearing. The man, the vessel for the demon, stood there. He wasn't smiling anymore. The charming, almost playful facade he'd worn was gone, stripped away to reveal something ancient and utterly devoid of warmth. His eyes, now a solid, depthless black, regarded me not with anger, but with a cold, analytical curiosity. Impressive. His voice echoed in the cavernous space, lacking its previous human inflection. It was flatter, older, like the grinding of tectonic plates. No mortal has ever unraveled a pocket of my will before. They always break. They always choose the peace of dissolution. I tried to speak, but only a dry rasp came out. I felt hollowed out, a husk of the man I was just minutes, or was it years ago. You found the loophole, it continued, taking a slow step closer. The rules. Always the rules. It is the one thing that binds my kind. An unfortunate cosmic law. I cannot simply take what is not freely lost. That little excursion was an attempt to persuade you to lose it freely. To surrender. He crouched down, his face now level with mine. The sheer pressure of his presence was suffocating. But you didn't surrender. You held on. You held on to the memory of your family, even as I drank it from you, and you used that echo to find the flaw in my design. You are more resilient than I anticipated, David. Hearing my name from its lips sent a fresh wave of ice through my veins. It had never used my name before. The game had just changed. He stood up, brushing invisible dust from his perfectly tailored suit. I grow tired of this. The sport is gone. Now I simply want to win. He gestured to the center of the room. A simple wooden table and two chairs materialized from the shadows, swirling into existence like smoke given form. On the table was an ornate, obsidian hourglass. The sand within it had not yet begun to fall. The final wager, the demon announced, its voice leaving no room for negotiation. Your soul, your family's future, everything you hold dear, against the one thing I value. My perfect, unbroken record of victory. I struggled to my feet, my legs trembling. What is it? What's the final game? The demon's lips curled into a thin, predatory line. It was the closest thing to a smile I'd seen since returning, and it was terrifying. It is the simplest game of all, and the most impossible, he said, tapping a long, pale finger on the top of the hourglass. The first grain of black sand tipped over and began its descent. You will ask me a question, a single question. If I cannot answer it, you win. You walk away with your life, your family, and a memory of a nightmare that will fade with time. I stared at him, my mind racing, trying to find the trick. Sounded too simple. But, he added, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper, if I can answer it, if your question has an answer known anywhere in the vast, infinite library of existence, whether you know it or not, you lose. And I will not just take your soul. I will erase you. You will never have been born. Your wife will be a widow who never married. Your daughter will be an orphan who was never conceived. You will be a paradox, a whisper of nothing for all eternity. He gestured to the chair opposite him. The sand has begun to fall. You have until the last grain drops. Ask me, mortal. Ask a being who was present at the birth of light and will be there to watch the last star die. A question I cannot answer. I watched the last few grains of starlight sand cascade through the narrow neck of the hourglass. My heart was a steady, quiet drum in my chest. After a lifetime of frantic preparation, a strange and profound calm had settled over me. I had run the race. I had reached the finish line. All that was left was to see if the path I had chosen was the right one. The demon leaned forward, its ancient eyes glittering with amusement and impatience. It had answered my preliminary questions with dismissive ease. The age of the oldest undiscovered particle, the true name of the architect of the first religion, the final sound the universe would make at its own heat death. Each answer was given instantly, a trivial fact pulled from an infinite library. They were merely the opening moves in a game that had been played for eons, and my opponent was growing bored. "Your time dwindles, Arthur," it hissed, the sound like dry leaves skittering across pavement. "You have danced with physics and flirted with theology, but these are my domains. They are finite, knowable. Your soul is the wager, and I have come to collect. Ask." I nodded slowly, my gaze fixed on the creature. "You are right," I said, my voice even. "To ask you a question about the known universe would be foolish. It would be like asking the ocean to describe a single drop of water. You know all that was and all that will be." I reached into the inner pocket of my jacket and retrieved a simple, sealed envelope. I placed it on the polished wood of the table between us. "Everything you gave me," I began. "The wealth, the influence, the extended years. I used them. I used them for a single, solitary purpose. For the past 70 years, I have operated a foundation under 1,000 different names. It has no central office, no public face. Its only function was to intervene, quietly and anonymously, in moments of human desperation." The demon's expression didn't change, but I could feel a subtle shift in the room's atmosphere. A flicker of curiosity. "We funded experimental treatments for children whose parents had lost all hope. We paid off the predatory loans of families on the verge of collapse. We built wells in forgotten villages, sponsored artists who would have otherwise starved, and protected pieces of the natural world from the encroachment of industry. Thousands of lives saved or irrevocably bettered. Small, quiet miracles, all paid for with your currency." I pushed the envelope an inch closer to the center of the table. "My last will and testament is a simple document. Upon my death, a single person will be chosen at random from the thousands my foundation has saved. This person will be brought to a secure location. They will be given this envelope. Inside, they will find two things: the full, unvarnished story of my life and our pact, and a legal document that transfers every last cent of my remaining fortune to them. A sum that would make kings weep." The last grain of sand trembled at the precipice. "They will be told that their good fortune, their very life perhaps, is the direct result of a deal I made that damned my soul. They will be left alone for 1 hour to make a choice. They can sign the document and accept the fortune, living the rest of their days in unimaginable luxury. Or they can choose another path." I paused, letting the weight of my words settle in the timeless space. "There will be a second piece of paper in the room with them. It contains only 3 words. I forgive you. If they choose to sign that paper instead, the fortune is immediately incinerated. Every account, every asset, every trace of the wealth you gave me vanishes as if it never existed. And by the ancient laws of balance, the cosmic law that even you must obey, my soul's debt is cancelled, absolved by an untraded, uncoerced act of human grace." The final grain of sand fell. The hourglass was empty. A deep, resonant silence filled the library. The demon stared at me, its mask of amused superiority finally cracking. For the first time, I saw something other than power in its eyes. I saw uncertainty. "The choice is theirs alone," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Greed or grace? A fortune for themselves or freedom for a stranger they never knew? You have seen the birth of galaxies. You have watched civilizations rise and crumble to dust. You have peered into the hearts of mortals for millennia, and you know our every weakness, our every flaw, our every selfish impulse." I leaned forward, my entire life, my entire soul, resting on the precipice of this one final moment. "So tell me," I said, my voice clear and steady, "a being who knows everything, what is their name?" The demon went rigid. The air grew cold enough to frost the edges of the room. I could almost hear the grinding of immense, cosmic gears as it attempted to calculate, to process, to know. It dove into the future, but all it found were branching, shimmering possibilities. It saw a young woman in Ohio, a former cancer patient, weeping as she read my story, her hand hovering between the 2 documents. It saw an old man in Brazil, whose village now had clean water, staring at the fortune with hungry eyes. It saw 1,000 faces, 1,000 hearts, each a universe of unpredictable potential. Could calculate the probability. It could weigh the factors of greed against the potential for compassion. But the contract was not for probability. The loophole did not allow for a most likely outcome. It demanded a certain answer. To answer, the demon had to know with absolute, unequivocal certainty the outcome of a choice that had not been made. A choice born not of logic or physics, but of the mysterious, unquantifiable territory of the human soul. Saw them take the money. It saw them sign the forgiveness. It saw both possibilities existing at once, a paradox it could not resolve. Its knowledge was based on cause and effect, on the predictable chains of action and reaction. But an act of pure, selfless forgiveness is not an effect. It is a cause unto itself. It is a breaking of chains. The demon's form began to waver, the edges blurring like smoke. A low growl emanated from its throat, a sound of pure, undiluted frustration. It had been asked to measure the immeasurable. It had been asked to place a value on something that existed outside of its mathematics of damnation. It opened its mouth, but no sound came out. The ancient, all-knowing eyes were, for the first time in their long and terrible existence, blank. The being who was present at the birth of light could not answer a question about the heart of a single, unknown human. And then, as the silence stretched into an eternity, the pact began to unravel. The threads of dark energy that had bound me for a century dissolved into nothing. The weight on my soul, a pressure I had grown so accustomed to I had forgotten it was there, simply lifted. The demon did not scream. It did not rage. Simply faded. Its form thinned, becoming translucent, a look of profound cosmic shock etched on its fading features. It was not defeated by a clever trick or a logical paradox. It was defeated by a possibility, the possibility of human goodness, a variable it had always observed but never truly understood. The grand library dissolved around me, the endless shelves of books melting away like a dream. I was no longer in a timeless space between worlds. I was simply Arthur Penhaligon, an old man sitting in a simple chair in a quiet room as the morning sun streamed through the window. My vast fortune was gone. My supernatural influence vanished. All I had left was the life I had lived, and the soul I had just won back. I was free, and in the quiet hum of the ordinary world, I finally understood. The demon hadn't just lost a bet. It had been shown the one thing in all of creation that was, and always would be, beyond its comprehension. A mystery not of the cosmos but of the heart. And that was a power greater than any it could ever possess.